All right, so let's look at some of these questions here. The first one, fairly straightforward. It's giving us these two different absolute values, and they're asking which of the following could be the value of x, this variable here, times y. Now, what I strongly encourage you to do is pause the video and see if you can solve it first on your own. But if you get confused over something, then resume. But here, I'm going to set this up. So the first thing is we have inequalities for both of these. So we know we're just dealing with that situation here, right? Where we just basically have two sets of equations to solve for each of these. That should be relatively fast. Let's do the first one. 1 minus x is equal to 6. And the other possible equation would be 1 minus x is equal to negative 6. Let's solve what are the possible values for x here. Well, first one, we could subtract 1 for both sides. That gets us to negative x is equal to 5, and that tells us x could be equal to negative 5. Okay, that's the first one. Then the second possibility is, doing this rather fast, negative 1, x could be equal to positive 7. Check my work just to make sure that I didn't mess that up. But it looks like what we've got for x is that x could be either negative 5 or positive 7. All right, let's do the same thing for y. Let's see what we have here. 2y minus 6 is equal to 10. 2y minus 6 is equal to negative 10. Solving for the first one, we get y is equal to 8. Again, check my work, just in case you were confused at how I did that. Just added 6 to both sides, divided by 2. All right, add 6 to both sides. That gets us to 2y is equal to negative 4, which means y is equal to negative 2. So the two values for y are 8 and negative 2. I'll put that right here. Y can be either 8 or negative 2. Okay, so it's asking which of these could be the value of any of the x values, we have two of them, times any of the y values. We also have two of those. Let's see, can we get to negative 40? Well, it looks like we can. Negative 5 times 8, yep, that works. So check that one off. Oh, I should change colors. Can't even see it on the white background. Let's go to red. Yeah. Okay, that's that one. Can we get to negative 14? Well, let's see. I think so, right? Because we could do x7 times y negative 2. Yep, that would work. That's good. Can we get to negative 10? No, right? Because we have negative 5 and negative 2, but if we multiply those together, x and y, those values, we get positive 10, so that's out. What about positive 50? Yep, we can do that one too, right? You can see that. 7 times 8 is 56. So the three values that work are negative 40, negative 14, and positive 56. Okay, let's try this one, number 10. Now, look at this. Okay, so again, we can try to figure out what would the value of x be, and they say y squared is less than 0, and y is an integer. Which of the quantities would be larger? Well, let's just take a look at this for a minute. First off, let's figure this out. If I have an absolute value of negative x is greater than or equal to 6, remember, back to our rules. We have an inequality. The two different ways that we set this up would be, first, take the thing inside, negative x greater than or equal to 6. That's, number one. Number two, take that thing, negative x, switch the direction of the sign, of the inequality sign, and switch the direction of the 6. So that's going to get us to, has to be less than or equal to negative 6. Well, if we solve for this, let's see what we get. Remember, to get rid of a negative, we would have to multiply both sides by negative 1 to cancel off the negative. But remember, whenever you multiply or divide an inequality by a negative number, you have to switch the direction of the sign. So if I'm going to multiply this side here by negative 1, that gets me to x. And if I multiply this side here by negative 1, that gets me to negative 6. But then since I multiply by a negative, I switch the direction of the sign. So there we go. We're back to here. And same logic here. Multiply this side by negative 1, that gets me to x. Multiply that side by negative 1, that gets me to positive x. Switch the direction of the sign. Here's what we got. So what I know is that there are two possibilities. Either x can be equal to or less than negative 6, or x can be greater than or equal to positive 6. Okay, let's look at this one. If y squared is less than 0, y is an integer, what would have to be greater here? Well, just think about this for a minute. If we're going to square y, let me just put this down for a minute. This is a good problem. Let me just pause the video, pop some popcorn, settle in. Okay, let's look at this. This is a good problem because it's hitting us with a number of different things. You know, first idea was we had to make sure that we figured out what possible values for x we're allowed to use. It's either greater than or equal to 6 or less than or equal to negative 6. Okay, but then notice this for a minute here. If y is an integer and we're squaring it, what happens when you square an integer? You know, so squaring it just means multiplying it by itself, right? The result is always going to be positive, right? You're never going to be able, you know, doesn't matter what if you had a negative integer, like say -1, and I squared that, that is going to end up being +1. If I have a positive integer, say +1, and I square that, that's still equal to +1. Anytime you square an integer, you get a positive. So if y is going to be positive, no matter what it is, and x times y is less than 0, that must mean that x has to be a negative number. Hopefully that makes sense. So that means we cannot use this set of possible values for x because those are all positive. We have to use a negative one. So it's, you know, the value of x that we can use has to either be -6 or something further down, -6, -7, 8, whatever it might be. So if we're asked to compare these, what would be larger? -4 or x? The larger value has to be b, because the smallest value, you know, basically the biggest value that we can use, the least negative, I should say, of x that we're allowed to use is -6. And -4 is greater than -6. So the answer is B. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, I'm going to pause this video here, upload this, and we're going to work on the next 3 questions.